The first time I saw her, the world grew silent. I was 16 then, a poor boy in a foreign land, standing behind the counter of a small cafe tucked into the corner of a cobblestone street in Florence, Italy. The air smelled of roasted coffee beans and warm bread, the chatter of wealthy customers bouncing against the walls. I worked long hours, not because I wanted to, but because I had to. My mother, my only family, had sacrificed everything to bring us here from Ghana after my father's death. Life in Europe was meant to be better, but reality was cruel. She cleaned houses for the rich, scrubbing marble floors and polishing silver cutlery she would never use, while I swept floors, carried crates, and waited tables. That day, when Clara Moretti walked in, everything changed. She didn't belong in our little cafe, not a girl like her. Her golden hair fell in waves across her shoulders, her blue eyes shimmering like the Mediterranean at sunrise. She wore a white dress, light as air, and pearls around her neck that told me instantly this was a girl born into wealth. She was the daughter of power, of privilege, of everything I was not. But she smiled at me, and when I asked what she wanted, her voice was soft, melodic. "Just a cappuccino, please." From that day, she kept coming back, every morning at the same hour. At first, I thought it was coincidence, then habit, but soon I realized she wasn't coming for the coffee. She came for me. We spoke in fragments at first, polite greetings, shy glances. But soon she asked me questions about my life, about Ghana, about my dreams. Nobody had ever asked me those things before, not in that city where I was invisible, where men like me carried bags, opened doors, and remained nameless. But she wanted to know me. I told her I wanted more than this life, that I wanted to study, to build something, to matter. And she listened, her eyes soft, as though she believed in me, even when I struggled to believe in myself. Days turned into weeks, and our bond grew stronger. One evening, as the cafe lights glowed dim and the last customers had gone, she lingered by the counter. Her hand brushed mine, and she whispered, "David, I don't care that you're poor. I love you." I froze, my heart pounding. No one had ever said those words to me before, not with such truth. I looked into her eyes, and I knew. I loved her too. But the world is cruel to love that dares to cross boundaries. It wasn't long before her family found out. Her father, Alessandro Moretti, was one of the wealthiest men in Florence. He owned banks, vineyards, half the marble buildings on the piazza. To him, Clara was not a daughter but an asset, a jewel to be guarded, bartered, married off to another family of equal wealth. When he discovered she was meeting a poor black boy in a cafe, his fury was unstoppable. He came himself one evening. The cafe door slammed open, and there he stood in his tailored suit, his gold watch gleaming, his face twisted with disgust. He pointed at me as though I were filth. "You dare touch my daughter?" he thundered. The cafe went silent. Even the old clock seemed to stop ticking. Clara stood between us, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Papa, please." But he silenced her with a glare. "Listen to me, boy," he spat, his voice dripping venom. "You are nothing. You will never be anything. Stay away from my daughter, or I will destroy you." The humiliation burned deeper than fire. Customers stared, whispering. My hands shook, but I clenched my fists, holding back the rage boiling inside me. Clara reached for me, sobbing, but her father grabbed her arm and dragged her away. That night was the last I saw her, or so I thought. Because later, under the shadow of the moon, she slipped from her father's mansion and came to find me. Her hair was undone, her eyes red from crying. She pressed a crumpled piece of paper into my hand, her fingers trembling. "David," she whispered, her voice breaking, "wait for me. Promise me you won't forget." Tears stained her cheeks as she kissed me, desperate, hungry, the kiss of someone who knew it might be the last. I promised. I swore I would wait, no matter what. But promises don't fill stomachs. They don't erase poverty. They don't silence the shame of being called nothing. The next morning, I left Florence. With only her memory in my heart and fire in my chest, I swore I would prove him wrong. I would prove to the world that I was not nothing. The road was merciless. I moved from city to city, working any job I could find. I studied at night in libraries, learning business, finance, technology. I slept on floors, ate scraps, endured sneers and slurs. Europe was cold to men like me, but every time I wanted to give up, I heard Clara's voice in my mind.
If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe. More emotional stories like this are waiting for you.
I heard Clara's voice in my mind. Promise me. And so I worked harder. Years passed. I rose from the shadows. I started a small company, then another. I poured my pain into ambition, my love into building a future. Slowly, success found me. By 30, I was no longer the poor boy sweeping floors. I was a man who owned offices across Europe, a man whose name was spoken with respect in boardrooms. I wore the suits of men who once looked down on me. I drove cars through gates that once barred me. But in my heart, I carried a single question. Did she still remember? 10 years had passed when I returned to Florence. The city was the same. The piazza still bustled. The bells still rang. The cafe still smelled of coffee and bread. But time had changed me. No longer a boy, I walked the streets as a man carved by fire. I asked about Clara. Whispers followed. Some said she had refused every suitor her father had brought. Others said she lived quietly, away from the world, her heart belonging to no one. And then I saw her. In the cafe, our cafe. She sat by the window, her hair tied back, her face more mature, more graceful. Time had touched her, but her beauty was still radiant. She held a cup of cappuccino, her fingers trembling as though even after all these years she was waiting for someone. I stepped forward. Her eyes lifted, and when they met mine, the world stopped. The cup slipped from her hands, spilling across the table. Tears filled her eyes. "David," she whispered, her voice cracked, her whole body shaking. "You came back." I nodded, my own throat tightening. "I told you I would." She rose, her hands covering her mouth as though afraid it was a dream. And then, before the whole cafe, she ran into my arms, clutching me as though 10 years of silence had been nothing. We cried, both of us. People watched, but we didn't care. For in that moment, nothing else existed. Not money, not class, not time. Only love. "You loved me when I was poor," I whispered into her hair. "Now, let me love you for the rest of our lives." And in her tears, in her trembling laughter, in the way she held me like I was home, I found my answer. She had waited. She had always waited. And finally, after years of pain and fire, love had won.